What's up everybody? I know it's been a while, but I'm back with something big, literally. Let me introduce you to the Zvezda C-130 Hercules in 70-second scale. After completing the Revell F-22 Raptor, this became my second commissioned build. Honestly, I was in disbelief when a subscriber from Qatar asked me to build this massive aircraft. But he was serious and so was I. And just like that, I got started with the largest kit I've ever built. The Zvezda kit impressed me overall, including 3 highly detailed crew figures. To bring them to life, I started with a light coat of black paint for shadows. And after experimenting with various colors, Vallejo's light brown was the closest match for the Qatari Air Force uniform. I painted details like belts, buckles and hair, followed by a wash to accentuate the recesses. The cockpit also had impressive details, though much of it was hidden once the model was assembled. I moved on to the cargo bay next, painting the metal flooring and adding a wash for a bit of variation. My subscriber preferred the cargo bay doors closed, so I only built the basic structure for stability. The rear cabin was also kept basic with just a fire extinguisher added. Once the interior was complete, I assembled the landing gear wells and filled minor gaps before securing the clear parts with Amos Ultra Glue. And a quick warning here. There are a few mistakes in the manual, so keep an eye out. Also, some exterior decals aren't even listed anywhere. Next, I spent a lot of time adding rivets all over the model with a rivet maker and fine point tool for tight spots. The fuselage halves fit well with just one troublesome gap on the underside that required removing a lot of material. Then I glued the halves together in sections rather than all at once, sanding the joints afterwards. The cargo bay doors fit nicely, so I moved on to the engines, adding photo-etched parts from Eduard. As usual, these were tiny, fiddly and required bending into shape. Some PE parts for the engines were slightly oversized, so I trimmed both the kit and PE components to make them fit. I even crafted a tiny hinge from wire. While these details are barely noticeable, it's satisfying to know that they are there. After assembling the engines, I rescribed panel lines and added more rivets there. The kit needed 25 grams of nose weight to prevent tail sitting. I used fishing weights secured with poster tack inside the nose and wheel well. Once all the PE parts were mounted, I primed the model using AK Interactive's primer and microfiller. While I honestly didn't notice any microfilling effect, it airbrushed beautifully straight out of the bottle, providing excellent coverage over the plastic and PE parts. And it was also easy to clean up. Then I masked the windows and filled remaining gaps before priming the fuselage. The front windshield was treated with looks like glass before applying pre-cut masks, which saved me a lot of time. At the client's request, I added a refueling probe, even though it's not standard on the Qatari Hercules. For pre-shading, I used black and brown paints to create random patterns. I then applied the main color FS36173 in thin layers until the pre-shading was subtly visible. I tested this technique on the stabilizers and fuel tanks before moving on to the wings. Temporarily attaching the wings to the fuselage ensured an even finish at the joints. I also highlighted panel lines with black paint, followed by light coats of the base color to to subtly tone down the pre-shading. The result was exactly what I had envisioned. While it might appear a bit too intense here, I knew the following steps would help tone down the effect even more. Next, I painted the walkway areas. It took quite a bit of effort, and I used unused decals to help masking off these areas precisely. Then I moved on to the wheels and propellers. Rather than using the provided masks for the wheel hubs, I opted to spray the paint through a circular template, which works just as good. For the propellers, I applied the supplied decals. Unfortunately, the carrier film was quite large, so I carefully cut each of the 48 decals individually to ensure a precise fit. After painting the metallic areas and small engine details, the assembly of the engines and propellers went smoothly. The nacelles fit well onto the wings. Decals were the most frustrating part of this build. Despite the smooth surfaces and multiple setting solutions I tried, silvering remained a persistent issue, especially with the large walkway decals. I even sanded down carrier film and repainted the affected areas, but that didn't completely resolve the issues either. Interestingly, I recently came across a build report from another modeler who faced the same problems. So at least I now know I wasn't alone in this. If I were to build this kit again, I would paint the walkways instead of using the decals. Afterward, I tackled the decals for the Qatar Emiri Air Force. After some research and calculations for the correct sizes, I had gathered everything I needed. A friend who prints decals helped me out, and I applied them like regular decals. The process went smoothly, but silvering was still an issue. As before, none of my setting solutions worked, so I decided to try something different. Covering the whole model in dirt. Well, not exactly, but for the first time I mixed a wash using pigments, water and a drop of dish soap. I applied it all over, and when it dried the model looked pretty awful, and I was initially worried about what I had done. However, removing the excess was easy with a wet cloth. In the end, only the pen lines, recesses and rivets retained a bit of dirt, giving the impression of a Hercules weathered by the intense heat and dust of Qatar's climate. After reviewing my photos of the C-130, I decided to add more weathering. I used an airbrush template to recreate handprints on some hatches. A small but authentic detail. I also spotted some bird droppings in one of the photos and decided to add my own little contribution to the model. I kept it subtle, but I think it gives the Hercules a bit of extra character. And lastly, I added exhaust stains to the APU exhaust and additional decals I noticed while checking reference photos. As I said, those were not mentioned in the manual. Once everything was done, I sealed the decals and weathering with VMS matte varnish. After this final painting step, I removed the masking tape from the clear parts. Unfortunately, the tape had left residue on the windshield after I had dipped it in the looks like glass. Luckily, I was able to fix this with another coat of the product. The final steps were painting the position lights and attaching the remaining clear parts. And the very last touch was gluing on the photo-etched windshield wipers. A fiddly task, but once done I could finally call the C-130 Hercules complete. So after a long period of on and off work on the C-130, it was finally complete and shipped to Qatar. And my client was thrilled with the result. Despite the decal silvering, I'm really happy with how it turned out. This was by far the largest kit I've tackled, and it took me several months to complete. Working with tiny PE parts was tricky, and the decal silvering was frustrating, but in the end I think the paint job made up for it. As you know, I usually build smaller fighter jets, so the size difference is pretty evident in the photos here. I would love to build more and share more videos, but real life has been keeping me busy. That said, my next project, the smallest 72nd scale aircraft I've built so far, is already finished. And I'll be uploading a video on that soon. This one was a gift from a Czech subscriber and a nice change from the huge Hercules. If there's a specific model you would like me to build, just reach out. And that's it for the Zvezda C-130 Hercules in 72nd scale. If you haven't already, please leave a comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching and enjoy the slideshow. See you next time.